At 0741 local time, 4 F-35 is screamed off the runway at Rahman Air Base. Call signs Venom 1 through 4, clawing eastward toward Iran's space headquarters. The facility feeding real-time targeting data to ballistic missiles still falling on Israeli cities. Everything about this strike package was engineered for invisibility. But southeast of Tehran, an Iranian battery had been sitting cold, dark, and patient for 8 days. It had just found them. Over western Iran, Venom-led's threat warning caught a radar burst. Short, sharp, gone. A second burst hit them 40 kilometers later on a different bearing. Someone was handing them off. Crews who had learned to take one look, pass the picture, down the line, and go dark before a harm could answer. The Israelis were being tracked by people who understood exactly what happened to crews that stayed on too long. Then, Venom 3's engine management system lit amber across his helmet display. Turbine inlet temperature spiking past limits. The single Pratt & Whitney F135, the only engine this aircraft carries, was already throttling itself back to protect the blades, shredding 15% of thrust without asking the pilot's opinion. Over friendly airspace, that's a maintenance write-up and an early lunch. Over Tehran, one flameout means an Israeli pilot in an ejection seat above the most hostile capital on Earth. Venom lead made the call in 4 seconds. Venom 3 couldn't continue. Venom 4 would escort him out. Both jets peeled southwest, nursing the sick engine toward Iraqi airspace. The formation had just lost half its aircraft 9 minutes from the target. What remained was 2 jets, 8 bombs, and a mission that had been planned for 16. Venom 1 checked the clock, 9 minutes to the initial point, 3 more to weapons release. 12 total minutes with no aggressive maneuvering, no afterburner, nothing that spiked their thermal signature. While every surviving Iranian air defense crew in the city stared at the gap in the sky where Venom 3 and 4 had been. The IRGC space headquarters was a multi-building compound. Rooftop antenna arrays connected 5 Iranian satellites to the only people on Earth authorized to command them. Below that, control rooms managed orbital parameters and encryption keys. 16 bombs could have covered every structure with margin to spare. 8 meant choosing. Antenna arrays first, control room second, server infrastructure third. 1 judgment spare per target. A calculation that would have taken a targeting cell 30 minutes in peacetime. Took these 2 men 45 seconds at cruise altitude over Tehran. That's not improvisation. That's what happens when you train for the worst version of the day before the day arrives. But the weapons math was about to become a footnote. When Venom 3 and 4 deviated from the planned corridor, every altitude block in the Tehran strike wave shifted. Dozens of Israeli packages were converging on the capital simultaneously, all stealth aircraft that couldn't detect each other on radar, because that was precisely the point of their design. The CAOC pushed emergency deconfliction updates across the wave. Venom 1 and 2 received new altitude blocks 3,000 feet lower than the mission plan. 3,000 feet closer to everything on the ground that wanted them dead, and directly into the detection envelope of a system the Israelis had assessed as sitting this war out. The Korad 15 battery commander southeast of the city had watched the entire war from behind a cold radar. He'd counted the Bavar 373 batteries that radiated, fired, and ceased to exist. Each one answered by an AGM-88 harm within 90 seconds of its first transmission. Every battery that fought had lasted under 2 minutes. He planned to last longer by a simple rule: never transmit unless the shot was worth dying for. His electro-optical tracker caught 2 thermal signatures at 35 kilometers, drifting northwest towards central Tehran. An F-35 at military power exhausts at over 1,500 degrees Celsius. Against the cold upper atmosphere, that thermal bloom reads like a searchlight to a passive sensor that doesn't radiate, doesn't broadcast, and cannot be detected by the F-35I's threat warning receiver. Like sitting in a dark parking lot with your headlights off, you can see someone approaching by the glow of their phone. They have no idea you exist. He lit the Nahem 804 radar for 3 seconds, just long enough to refine bearing and range before going cold again. That burst was all the Korad 15 gave away, and it was already too late to take it back. Inside Venom 1, the Barracuda electronic warfare suite caught the emission before it ended. Across the F-35I's airframe, more than 30 antennas span the entire electromagnetic spectrum simultaneously. 30 radio stations playing at once, and the system isolates the one that just changed its song. Within those 3 seconds, the Barracuda had classified the emitter, geolocated the battery to within meters, and tagged it as a Korad 15 southeast of the city. The Iranian commander hadn't just revealed his position, he'd handed the Israelis his system type, his missile loadout, and his engagement envelope. Knowing where he sat and doing something about it were two entirely different problems. The Sayya-3 missiles carried a claimed 45-kilometer engagement range against stealth targets. The formation was inside 35 and closing. The geometry was tightening on both ends simultaneously, and a harm was already in the air. The battery commander kept his radar cold and watched the EO tracker. The thermals drifted through 33 kilometers, 31. Every kilometer closer meant his missiles needed less mid-course guidance. Every kilometer closer meant the harm had less distance to cover. He had perhaps 30 seconds of radar time before something moving at Mach 3 shut him off permanently. 30 seconds to reacquire 2 stealth contacts his radar could barely resolve, build a firing solution through active jamming, and get missiles off the rail before the answer arrived. He lit the NAM 804 at full power. What he didn't know was that the harm seeker already had his address the moment he transmitted. The AGM-88E is 536 pounds of institutional memory, a 150-pound blast fragmentation warhead, supersonic with a defining feature that makes radar discipline irrelevant, shut off the transmitter mid-flight, and the missile doesn't care. It memorized the coordinates the instant the beam came on. GPS and inertial navigation carry it to a cold antenna like a letter that's already been addressed. You can stop talking. The missile already knows where you live. His display fought through Israeli jamming, flickering between usable data and electronic noise, each partial solution dissolving before he could commit. Like trying to read a message while someone keeps knocking the phone from your hand. You catch a word, maybe 2, then static. The jamming cycled to another emitter west of the city, and for 1 second, maybe 2, the display cleared. 2 contacts at 31 kilometers. Clean bearing, clean range. His hand moved toward the firing panel. The warhead arrived first. 8 days of emissions discipline, 9 months of sanctions-era engineering, answered by a missile the Americans requisitioned like printer paper. The antenna truck became scrap. The last guided threat over Tehran was gone. But the formation still had to fly through the city. 8 days of sustained strikes had converted every IRGC ground crew with a trigger into a one-man declaration of defiance. ZU-23-2 autocannons hammered upward at 800 rounds per minute, 23mm rounds reaching an effective ceiling well below the F-35's. DSHK tracers burned red arcs from rooftops like scattered road flares across the skyline. None of it was guided. A 23mm round doesn't require a fire control solution. It only needs to occupy the same cubic meter of air as your canopy. The distributed aperture system painted every tracer stream across the pilot's helmet visors in real time. 360-degree spherical coverage from 6 infrared cameras mounted around the fuselage. The picture looked like a fireworks display, designed by someone who hated the audience. The pilots threaded between the densest arcs with the target ahead. The bomb bay doors opened for 3 seconds of maximum exposure. 8 GBU 39 small-diameter bombs dropped into Iranian airspace. Folding wings deployed. 40 nautical miles of unpowered glide range. 2 guidance systems running in parallel, fighting Iranian GPS jamming and spoofing with SAASM receivers that rejected every unauthenticated signal and hunted for verified military satellites through the noise. They found them, degraded, intermittent, but real. The first bomb punched through the rooftop antenna array. The uplink connecting 5 Iranian satellites to their ground station dropped off the spectrum mid-transmission. The second destroyed the control room. The third buried itself in the server infrastructure. The fourth finished the collapse. 500 kilometers overhead, 3 satellites queried the coordinates hard-coded into their flight computers. The signal reached rubble. They queried again. No acknowledgement came, and none ever would. 3 satellites still circling the Earth had just become the world's most expensive screensavers. Israel didn't need an anti-satellite weapon, just 4 250-pound bombs and a building address.